What's up, Kansas City? I'm your host, Glenn Bryan Frizzell. Today we are taping the historic 18th and Vine Jazz District at the Lincoln Building, home of Cascade Media Group. Today's special guest is Miss Kari Keffe. She is the community catalyst here in Kansas City for the Mozilla Foundation. Welcome to What's Up, Kansas City, Miss Keffe. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
We are extremely glad that you could join us today. First off, can you tell us what is the Gigabit Community Fund and what is your role with them?
I would love to. So the Gigabit Community Fund was a project that was launched by Mozilla earlier this year in Kansas City and a companion project in Chattanooga, Tennessee, sponsored in large part by the National Science Foundation. It's really an opportunity for us to explore how technology can transform the way that we teach in our educational systems and how we learn. So what does Google Fiber's presence in Kansas City do for us in education? That's what we largely aim to find out. So we spent $150,000 investing in educational programs and technology that serves those programs to kind of test and beta some of those experiences. So we have 9 projects currently in Kansas City being tested in 24 different school and out-of-school spaces.
Now, Ms. Keffe, you are a marketing guru. How does your background in marketing play an integral role in these 9 projects that are being tested currently?
I'd love to be called a guru, first of all. Thank you for that. It's
No
one
problem.
of those things that marketing is a communication tool, essentially, and so much of what we have had to do when we came here to talk about gigabit technology, it's something that people don't totally understand. They don't really know what gigabit and broadband technology can do, so they don't understand the power that it brings to the table. We're also taking technologists and web developers and having them work side by side with educators and school systems. So this has become paramount to a communication tool. How do we get these people in the same room together to think about the pain points that educators have in the classroom and in our libraries and museums, and working with technologists to really develop and deploy next generation technology that can better serve those educators.
Now, Ms. Keffe, technology has certainly evolved. When I was in high school, I remember we would get the CD-ROM, we would put in the old modem, and it would dial up, and you hear the computer buzz. And we mainly used computers back in the day for games such as Oregon Trail and Tomb Raiders, such as that nature. But with the evolution of technology, Ms. Keffe, have you found that there's still a discrepancy? Can you speak to that? Do we all have equal access to social networking, to technology in our communities? And for those of us who do not, can you speak about the importance of having that?
Yeah, inclusion and access are 2 huge points in how we address education. You have this whole generation of digital natives, but truly that native technology is not ubiquitous or even or equitable across socioeconomic pathways, school systems. You've got high-performing schools, you've got low-performing schools. And so really taking technology as a way to kind of serve and bridge some of those gaps has been a goal and a mission of the project holistically. But it's something that you can kind of see. It's a goal that I think the city shares across many different pillars of community stakeholders and community leaders. But to see some of this kind of take shape transformatively with a project, we have a project with the Kansas City, Missouri Public Library, where they are taking high-tech virtual reality Oculus Rift headsets, and they are using them with kids in the northeast and southeast branches to learn using Minecraft as a design tool to create their ideal neighborhood. So they're actually using Minecraft in a kind of gamified way to design components that would make up their neighborhood. So they look around, and the library considers this kind of a community building or a civic engagement tool.
Sounds exciting.
It is pretty exciting. And then they get to actually step inside their design in a three-dimensional virtual reality world to actually see how that plays out.
Now,
So it's a fully immersive experience.
Is that where everything is headed? 3D printing, 3D technology?
I think it certainly augments the educational scope of what's capable. There's a whole initiative in immersive education, so it really brings technology to the forefront of how we're teaching. It allows, a marine biologist down on a submarine, off the Pacific coast to be imported into a classroom to teach a very specific set of curriculum or, deliver a certain amount of expertise in it. So it brings this fully immersive, transportative experience into the way that we teach.
I know we're bringing some of these things into our educational system, but is there ever a case of too much when we have smartphones at 6 and 7 and 8? And maybe some of us are still a little old-fashioned, where it was just paper and pencil, and maybe VCR if we were lucky and we behaved, and the teacher thought we deserved to see a movie. But does technology? Is there ever a case, do you feel, Ms. Keffe, where technology interferes with the educational process or the communication process?
I think certainly that there's a case to be made for anything in excess. Moderation is typically, a key in any scope. Too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. So I think you can probably lump technology into that same course. But certainly I think that there's more opportunities to use those powers for good and to create more champions of digital skill building, which can be applied to vocational pursuits, can be applied to college and career readiness, and really just besets a broader scope of skill building. And Mozilla's interest in this is truly being a champion for that level of literacy, both in digital skill building, but also understanding fully the power of the web, not only consuming it and consuming content and production, but actually building the web, pulling the curtains back and looking at how things work, how things are built, and contributing to that overall.
Now, I looked a little. I cheated. I did my research. I looked I looked on I looked online, your online resume, LinkedIn, and I want to ask you a little bit about your background. If you could tell us a little bit about your background. I know you worked in the Great Plains Mall shopping area.
I did. I was in retail marketing for years.
Wow.
I have a marketing degree. Went to the University of Wyoming. And have spent the last 20 years really in various marketing pursuits on the agency side, on the corporate side. But I did spend a lot of time in retail marketing. I loved the sort of small business appeal of retailers, and did spend a couple years at the Great Mall working for a large real estate investment company out of Ohio.
Were you centrally located, or were you here? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I was in the greater Kansas City area, and that particular shopping center is out in Olathe, and distressed malls have a certain need for problem solvers to come in and make some inroads promotionally and from a marketing standpoint. So I love that.
You are a problem solver. Can you tell me how you have your sense of passion for the job? What makes you passionate and want to reach out and help?
I got into this line of work really in the education space because I have kids that are in K through 12, and I was so enamored with the kinds of innovation and programming that was available at some of the suburban schools. And I live in an urban area of Kansas City, Missouri, and looking at specifically Blue Valley CAPS and some of the innovation-based programming that was very central to the school systems there, and wanting to desperately bring that kind of modular programming into the urban core. And so I spent a lot of time really, boots on the ground, knocking on doors, talking to people, advocating for that level of immersive experience in youth programming for high school students to be more progressive in how they have exposure to project-based learning, exposure to businesses and industry standard tools and those kinds of things. And so there was a lot of interest in that. It's a big evolving sort of way in which we're educating our young people. And you can start to see the trend in this happening earlier and earlier on the scope. So now, we've got a program that was funded by the Mozilla Hive KC, which supports coding for girls. And so it's called Tech Sheroes, and it's a project by the Kansas City Women in Technology. So they serve as mentors to 7th and 8th grade girls at Trail Ridge Elementary School in the Shawnee Mission School District. And so those girls are paired with a mentor who's in technology, who is actively teaching them how to code, spending weekends at workshops and really building, a level of technical comfort and exposure to careers in those various pathways. So that was the kind of programming that I saw was really lacking in the urban core, and Mozilla has kind of come into the market really looking to champion those types of programs with innovation funding through the Mozilla Gigabit Fund, but also through Hive, which is essentially an open network of member organizations serving youth. It's a free network with which to develop professionally. So there's a lot of resources and tools and funding opportunities for youth serving organizations, schools, libraries, museums to really get involved and participate in a more collaborative way to connect more learning experiences within the metro area. A lot of these programs kind of tend to happen in a vacuum. So you've got this great program at this one school in Shawnee Mission, but how do you get that same level of programming at other schools? So Hive really brings together, acts as kind of the connective tissue across these multiple organizations that share the same sort of mission-driven, mission-critical goals and objectives so that they can reach more people and really start to put together that learning can happen anywhere, anytime, not just in school. A lot of key learning for youth happens in after-school programs, on the weekends, at community centers. And so to really bring all of that together in a more cohesive way where they can build, upon those skills and have that level of exposure in a recognized and more cohesive way.
Would you care to mention specifically any partners, any entities who you're currently working with?
Yeah, that's a great point. So we work locally with a number of stakeholders, both in the high-tech sort of genre with the Gigabit Fund. We work with the KC Digital Drive, which is an organization empowered by the city to coordinate efforts on a large scale in civic pursuits, in healthcare, and in education to build not only the gap in technology access, but also to really fuel innovation in those respects. So we do a lot of work with the KC Digital Drive, and coincidentally, that is the partner to which we have created this new Hive fund for innovation and tech-based initiatives for youth-serving organizations. So we've got a number of key projects that we are actively raising funds for to support in the metro area, and we do that in concert with the Digital Drive.
Do you ever feel that nonprofits are the unsung champions?
Oh,
unsung
absolutely.
Heroes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about, they operate and act so much like a startup because their resources are lean, they do more with less, and they're often very passionate individuals because, you tend to not make as much money and it's hard work. So I deeply respect what people who work in the nonprofit space are able to do, especially when resources are constrained. A lot of people are competing for the same level of funding or resources, volunteers, and those kinds of things. So we do a lot of work with local nonprofits. So yeah, absolutely.
Now, Ms. Keffe, has your commitment to the technology, has that transformed the way that you use technology in your own home, in your own spare time?
Well, it certainly educated me to the possibilities of where things are going. I mean, I look at this kind of like the way we look at the release of the new Apple, operating system. So now we're coming out with iOS 8, and everybody, the designers and everybody are, optimizing for applications that use that operating system. So no longer are people designing or optimizing for 7, right?
Oh,
That's old news,
that's
right?
old.
You got to get your new device and have the new operating system. And Gigabit technology is really the same way. It's kind of like designing for the future. It isn't ubiquitous yet. Not everybody has it. Schools and libraries are coming on board, more and more quickly. But residentially, it isn't everywhere. And so we're looking to create more points of access and to continue to make that a more seamless, transition. But we are designing for the future. So we're using Kansas City as kind of a model, a city model for education and designing for that futuristic capability and scope.
So what happens next?
Well, what happens next is we're looking to resupply our innovation funds through the National Science Foundation. We look to make some announcements on that early next year. So you can find us on the web and follow us along. We've got monthly events and all sorts of great things going on.
And can you give us a web address then?
Yeah, it's hivekc.org.
hivekc.org.
That's right.
Thank you, Ms. Keffe, for joining us today. We will definitely have to keep abreast on further developments.
Yes.
My name is Glenn Brian Frizzell. You've been tuned into What's Up Kansas City. Check out more video online at www.whatsupkansascity.net. And remember, the sky's the limit. Aim high. Shoot for the moon. If you miss, at the very least, you would have landed among the stars. Take care until next time.